So is she, believe me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. So I had a sweet conversation with June yesterday afternoon, and may all be well with her. Since we're all here, I guess I can report that the vote was decisive in favor of restarting the book at the beginning when we finish with Tukaram. And so that's what we'll do. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Thy rod and thy staff, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So, Jillian, do you have the book open there in front of you?
I have it, and I am opening it now.
All right. The poem is Geronimo. I particularly thought you might want to read this poem.
Okay. I haven't read it before, so this will be new to me.
Okay.
Okay. Geronimo. You might hear the beautiful shout of Geronimo from a lover who has just dove down from a cliff and is heading full speed into the ocean, into the beloved. And of course, there will always be lots of gab along the shore from those who are drawn to God, but have yet to really get bare-assed and go in. Geronimo may be the last word we hear from that brave gal falling 625 miles per hour from a cliff. For once beneath the sea, once within the water, only fish open their mouths, still bargaining for something. The soul becomes quiet in ecstasy, so quiet. Love speaks in absence of God, not in the heights of passion. Geronimo. You might hear the beautiful shout of Geronimo from a lover who has just dove down from a cliff and is heading full speed into the ocean, into the beloved. And of course, there will always be lots of gab along the shore from those who are drawn to God, but have yet to really get bare-assed and go in. Geronimo may be the last word we hear from that brave gal for falling 625 mph from a cliff. For once beneath the sea, once within the water, only fish open their mouths, still bargaining for something. The soul becomes quiet in ecstasy, so quiet. Love speaks in absence of God, not in the heights of passion.
Isn't that a beauty?
It is beautiful.
Heading full speed into the ocean, into the beloved. And, you know, Tukaram can never resist being funny. And of course, there will always be lots of gab along the shore from those who are drawn to God, but have yet to get really get bare-assed and dive in. And I just love the way it says, soul becomes quiet in ecstasy, so quiet. Love speaks in absence of God, not from the heights of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have anything to say about this one?
It reminds me a little, sort of tangentially, of the famous Ramakrishna story of pressing the devotee's head underwater, until he or
Yes.
she is like yearning for God,
Yearning for a breath of air.
yearning for a breath of air. And this is kind of like having is what's the word? Is allowing that to happen. Is yeah.
Yeah, actually inviting it to happen.
That's the word I was looking for.
Geronimo!
Inviting. Yes, inviting it to happen.
Right.
Surrendering.
Right. And, Tukarama's humorous about the lots of gab, but I don't think he's judging. I don't think he's saying that's bad. It's just, the talk, as he says, love speaks in the absence of God.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be very loving gab.
Mm-hmm.
They're drawn to God.
And the fear of surrendering is what it says to me. You can be drawn to it, but you have to be really bare-assed. You have to kind of surrender everything.
Yes.
And that can be scary.
And I think that is exactly the meaning of bare-assed.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just be completely naked of everything that would be an impediment.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I see that, like, what Jillian was saying about, surrendering on that, those stanzas there, like you're just getting familiar with divine or whatever, and you stick your toe in the water, instead of just taking the plunge.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I see that metaphor there.
Yes.
And I do love this last verse 2 about the soul becoming quiet in ecstasy. It's just so lovely.
Yes.
Really, really, really lovely.
And so true, any of us who have persisted in prayer long enough, it just becomes very quiet. Prayer or meditation. Anything else from anyone?
Last stanza caught my attention, Brother Shankara, more. The last one, which you said, it is so true. Exactly, it's very true. Soul becomes quiet in ecstasy. So quiet. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Very inspiring words.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
But there's this great suggestion that there's nothing. It's until we experience ecstasy, we're going to experience this state of love. But that's when we're seeking rather than diving in. Diving in without anything left to impede us. And only the fish are bargaining for something.
And I love that he uses that word bargaining, because isn't it Vivekananda who says so often, religion is for some people a matter of bargaining with God.
Yes, indeed. And again, there's nothing wrong with petitionary prayer. It's just limited. It's just, you're asking for something. You still want something rather than are willing to surrender everything.
And I think of bargaining too as, I guess we've all done it. God, I will, pray for you all the more if you just, you know what I'm going to say here, right? If you just do such and such, if you make my mother-in-law's surgery easier, if you save my cat, if you do this, then I will be a much better disciple, right?
Right.
Like we've all done it. At least I'll speak for myself.
Oh, well, yeah. Yes. Anything else? Okay, Jaime, would you like to read for us Pregnant Again?
Yes, sure, Brother Shankara. It's a very little one, cute and sweet. Pregnant again. I think the moon is pregnant again. I hope she won't sue me this time. I guess it's his humor. Pregnant again. I think the moon is pregnant again. I hope she won't sue me this time. I wonder what he's talking there.
Mhm.
I'm kind of tickled by this.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking like, are these translations like interpreted or?
Yes, Rajiv, if you read the introduction to the book by the author, he freely says that these are not translations. They are interpretations of, he gets an understanding of what the poet is saying. I mean, no one in Tukaram's time was going to shout the word Geronimo. Geronimo comes from the Apache Indians. Geronimo was a leader of the Apache. There she is. Namaste, Swayam. Geronimo was a leader of the Apache.
Namaste.
And was one of the last to be defeated. And so many people since then, particularly warriors of different kinds, from our side of the battle, have gone into battle shouting Geronimo. No surrender. And so, yes, and there's no doubt about it that there is some controversy about Ladinsky. Some scholars, especially, object to what he did with these poems. And if you read his introduction, he's unapologetic. He says, this is what, but I'm reasonably certain this is what Tukaram said in his own language.
Okay.
I mean, Marathi is not English. That's a fact. And so any honest translator of poetry, or for that matter, the very best prose, the non-ordinary prose, is going to say this is not a literal translation. This is an interpretation, so that you'll understand in the language that this is being translated into what the author meant in the language that they wrote. For example, there is a book of poetry, a collection of poetry called Les Fleurs du Mal. Now that's French. And if you simply translate it as the flowers of evil, which is the literal translation, it's just positively comical, because it means so much more than that. So yes. So anything about this poem, Pregnant Again?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I joined late, so it's not particularly about this poem, but talking about the translation, it's interesting. When I did one of the courses at Vedanta Life Academy, and I forgot, who the Swami was from, but somebody from Belur Mutt. And he was talking about I think the history of philosophy or something like that, that title of the course. And he said even Adi Shankaracharya, when he translated the scriptures, the Sanskrit word, he kind of, I wouldn't say the word twisted, I forgot the exact word, but there are so many meanings that can be taken from a particular word, and Adi Shankara chose to interpret it in the way that will support his position.
Yes, Vivekananda said, even Adi Shankaracharya tortured the text. Tortured the text. That was Vivekananda's comment on it. So, yes. Anything about this poem? I think the moon is pregnant again. I hope she won't sue me this time.
I'm sort of lost with this one.
Yeah,
Well, the
even I'm
moon-
staring at it.
Referring to
moon-
full moon, Brother Shankara? Is he referring to a full moon, which is big and pregnant again? I was just thinking.
Well,
Mm.
the thing about if we think of the beloved as the moon is the feminine. This is normally the moon is thought of as feminine. And so if you meditate on the divine feminine and actually have intimate relations with that divine feminine, which is well known in the mystical literature, well known that this actually happens. As a matter of fact, is it Kabir that has that poem about, Kali, had sexual relations with him and threw food all over his clothes and then sent him off to the event where he was supposed to be so pristinely. And he says, well, when he's asked about the divine, he says, I think you may find her at home still in the mood. So, but the Catholic saints, this is very much a part of the Catholic monastic tradition, especially for the nuns. They are the brides of Christ. And many of them testify to having intimate relations with the divine. Saint Teresa of Avila has a very moving poem about that.
I think it may have worked for them, but it's kind of very risky to go on these lines for most people.
Yes, Sri Ramakrishna says it is the left-handed path. But he doesn't judge it or say it's wrong. So you're right, Rajiv, it is risky. But these saints, they are risk takers. They're the ones who will say Geronimo and dive in. And they are not, they have left fear of consequences behind. As a matter of fact, St. Teresa of Avila has gorgeous poem about that too. About leaving all thought of consequences behind.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I just read the poem, and the way I would want to interpret is that he probably went into some kind of a samadhi by looking at the moon, and he merged. And the second line is probably Ladinsky's translation of whatever Tukaram said in Marathi when he came down from samadhi.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
I think you're absolutely right. We would not have these kind of relationships with the divine in our ordinary state of consciousness. That's clear.
Mhm.
I mean, in our ordinary state of consciousness, we're too distracted to do much of anything with great success most of the time. I mean, we're approximating success always, not full consummation of success.
The other part is like we have so many cases where there are people who have used these kind of concept to exploit other people, and these people I'm talking about in positions of power like gurus and swamis and so on.
Oh, yes, of course.
Mhm.
Well, that's always the case, yes. That's always the case. Yes, of course, Rajiv.
It's almost like I was at a point in time like respected a couple of people, and then I found this about them. I thought, let me actually Google search each and every one of these holy names, and I didn't want to, do a unfair sort of like I would admit I Googled even Swami Vivekananda and everybody, like, because I didn't want to be unfair to the people who I found were not up to the mark, and it's almost like 90% just. This is the point where 90% just sort of miss out.
Well, again, Rajiv, it's very hard to know when we're researching online the motivation of the person writing the whatever they've written. So
That's also true.
we must be, the thing is, if we're going to encounter someone, a very great writer of the 20th century said, "If you want to know me, you will find me in my work." So if all of that rings true for us, the work, then that's our relationship with that writer or teacher. Yeah, that's it. So Rajiv, you have the book there in front of you?
Brother Shankar,
Yeah.
Yes, dear.
I just wanted to say I love the way you put the end that you, if you want to know the person, I forgot the exact words you said, but read what I wrote. And that's so true. I mean, like, how can we not get uplifted by reading up? If I want to know about Swami Vivekananda, I would rather read what he wrote and what he lectured than what somebody else said in Google about him. So I
Yeah.
think you put that very nicely.
If you want to know me, you will find me in my work. If you want to know me, you will find me in my work.
Mhm.
I mean, Dylan Thomas was an absolute drunkard and a reprobate. You can read all about it in his book, The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Dog. He wrote us an autobiographical confession. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Dog. And yet then you read his book or his poetry. In the white giant's thigh, death shall have no dominion. Transcendent. They are transcendent. Or his lovely recollection of Christmas, A Child's Christmas in Wales. Why did he write A Child's Christmas in Wales? Because he was a drunk and he was broke, and he called his friends at the BBC and said, it was summertime. And his friends at the BBC said, well, Dylan, write us something for Christmas. And so he wrote A Child's Christmas in Wales. And his play for voices, Under Milkwood, which is sheer genius. Same thing. He called the BBC and said, I'm broke, I need some money, what can I do? And they said, well, write us a play for voices that we can put on the radio. So he wrote Under Milkwood. But he was a drunk and a reprobate. We have to remember, so was Girish Ghosh.
I mean, that's fine. I think I can forgive people who do all sorts of sin, but doing a sin and lying and cheating, that's something very different. Like, I did something wrong and then I said, okay, I did it and now I'm a changed person. Or maybe this is what I did and I'm honest about it. This is my way. If you want to join me, come with me. Otherwise, go away. That's perfectly okay. But there are people who sort of lie about it and like exploit and cheat and in the name of God and spirituality.
Oh, yes. And very many of these poets in this book remark on that particular phenomenon. So do you have the book there open in front of you, Rajiv?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to read us the poem Landlocked in Fur?
Yeah, sure.
Now
So
remember, read slowly and with emphasis, and read the poem twice, please.
all right. Landlocked in fur. I was meditating with my cat the other day, and all of a sudden she shouted, "What happened?" I knew exactly what she meant, but encouraged her to say more, feeling that if she got it all out on the table, she would sleep better that night. So I responded, "Tell me more, dear." And she soulfully meowed, "Well, I was mingled with the sky, and now look, I am landlocked in fur."
No,
To
you
this,
left out some. Well, I was mingled with the sky. I was comets.
oh, I think I have a different version. For me, it says, "Well, I was mingled with the sky, and now look, I am landlocked in fur."
Oh, you must have well, I was mingled with the sky. I was comets whizzing here and there. I was suns in heat. Hell, I was galaxies. But now look, I am landlocked in fur. To this I said, I know exactly what you mean. What to say about conversation between mystics. So does somebody else, Swayam, do you have the book open?
Yes, I do.
Okay, do you have the version that I just read?
Yes, I
Would you
do.
please read it? Sorry, Rajiv, we just need to have all the text because so much is said in these last two stanzas.
Yeah.
Okay. Landlocked in fur. I was meditating with my cat the other day, and all of a sudden she shouted, "What happened?" I knew exactly what she meant, but encouraged her to say more, feeling that if she got it all out on the table, she would sleep better that night. So I responded, "Tell me more, dear." And she soulfully meowed. Well, I was mingled with the sky. I was comets whizzing here and there. I was suns in heat. Hell, I was galaxies. But now look, I'm landlocked in fur. To this I said, I know exactly what you mean. What to say about conversation between mystics?
This is one of the sweetest poems in this whole book. I just love this poem.
We're missing Brahmadas with his cat, Brother Shankara. He would have loved this poem. Brahmadas is not here today.
And we're all landlocked in fur.
Mhm.
Which is exactly why, just why he says, I knew exactly what she meant. So what does it mean to be landlocked in fur? Anybody got anything to say about that?
To be bound by all our worldly desires. I mean, like Swamiji says, slaves to everything, slave to the material things, slave to relationships, slave to our body and mind. And um, so that's kind of like we are landlocked into all that. We cannot achieve the freedom until we break away from that.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That all constitutes our fur. And yet, would I want to be here without it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Would I want to be in manifestation without it? Look what the experiences are of people who are missing part of their fur, who don't have enough food, don't have enough clothing, don't have shelter, don't have mental stability. I mean, it's precarious enough, even as it is. So it's interesting. Anyone else have anything to say about it?
Shankara, I saw it, maybe the microcosmic side of it, that, you know, the cat and the author are meditating together and
Mhm.
having a mystical experience. And that moment when you kind of thump down out of samadhi into, you know, the heaviness of the body,
Right.
is kind of what I took from it, that it was in that instant of, oh, I really do still have this body to deal with.
That there's no doubt that's there, dear.
Mhm.
That's no doubt, and then there's no doubt that is the strong intention of the poem, is to point out what happens when we. That's why the cat says, "What happened?"
What happened, right? Right.
We thump down. I love the way you said that. But you know, this is the thing about reading these poems. Each of us is going to have our own feeling about what we find there. And when I read this, I thought there is that mirror reflection, landlocked in fur. It's It's a state that'll make you meow when you thump down, as you say, out of grace, out of that being one with grace. But on the other hand, just what I said.
And I do like the last stanza because it is, you know, again, the author and the cat have both experienced samadhi or this meditative state and can have this intimate conversation between the two of them. It's like they're sharing, because he says, I know exactly what you mean. I think that's very, very tender.
Yes, that's what I meant about this. It's such a sweet poem.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the feeling of Tukaram, or is it that even animals can enter mystical states?
Well, it's the testimony of many of the poets in this book. Meister Eckhart says he learned how to enter mystical states from the forest creatures and the trees of the forest.
Mm.
He says it very plainly and directly. St. Francis of Assisi gestures to it. Trying to think of anyone else. Maybe Rumi has a poem or two about that as well, but I don't remember well enough to be sure. But yes, the nature mystics will tell you that the natural state of being of these creatures in the world is a kind of samadhi. The difference between them and us is that there's no self-reflection. That's just how they are.
Mm.
But they don't know it because they don't know anything different from that.
Mm.
We have the capacity of reflection, which, no, this is something I'll just have to take their word for, that the creatures don't have. But what does Vivekananda say? Where shall we go to find God if not in our own hearts and in every living being? So the divine is fully present there. And according to the nature mystics, fully expressed there. The Baal Shem Tov also says, the Baal Shem Tov is the founder of the Hasidic movement. Now we mustn't confuse the Hasidic movement of the Baal Shem Tov, which was the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, 1600s, I think. We mustn't confuse what he founded with what it's become. Because just exactly like every great religious tradition, it becomes orthodox and rigid and formalized over time. But if you look into the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and look into his biography, you'll see that he also, this is one of the things that reminded me so much of him when I read Meister Eckhart. I thought, oh, this is the same, and approximately the same time too. No, I'm sorry. Meister Eckhart was 3 centuries earlier. So in any event, the answer seems to be yes, that the creatures of the world live in a kind of state of samadhi.
And I'd just like to add too, after, I don't currently have a cat, but I've had cats previously for 30 years, and they just gravitate towards you when you are meditating.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying they're on your lap. Sometimes yes,
Wow.
sometimes no, but you know, they're like at least in the room or near you. That's been my experience.
You're absolutely right. And Haima pointed out that Brahmadas isn't with us here this evening, but his cat Shiva actually does climb on his lap when he's meditating, and Brahmadas feels like the cat is meditating with him.
Wow.
And that, if you've ever seen that cat, even in a picture, it's a remarkable cat. The cat has visited here a number of times, and it is a truly remarkable animal. You look into the eyes of that cat and you say, there is a remarkable being there. Remarkable being.
Wow, that's cool.
It is cool. And
even
that cat was an answer to prayer for Brahmadas. He was lonely and needed companionship. And that cat showed up on his doorstep and said, adopt me. Just
meow.
demanded to be adopted.
Yeah. And even when I'm doing yoga, when I've done yoga, and you know, our last cat, we just had one cat for 3 years, and little guy would be in the other room, and as soon as I get on, you know, legs up the wall to do shavasana, here he would. He'd lay right next to me. I mean, you know, he wasn't there for the exercise. He was there for, you know, the meditation part. I mean, it just happened, not every time, but many, many times, you know.
Yes.
And I love the thump. You know, our little guy was like, I don't know, pushing 16 pounds. He was a big boy for a little guy. And just that thump, I can still hear it in my head, you know,
Right.
jumping off of something. It's just so accurate, you know. So yeah, but this is a little gem here. I love this poem.
Who wants to read Don't Bother to Even Ask? Who feels like reading that? Swayam, you want to read it?
Sure. Don't bother to even ask. I said to love, I want to pull your pants down. And she said, fine, don't bother to even ask. Though now, Tukaram is wondering why there are so many. Sorry, Brother Shankar, I have to stop because my doorbell is ringing and somebody is here and there might be disturbance.
Okay. Jillian, you want to start over?
Sure. Don't bother to even ask. I said to love, I want to pull your pants down. And she said, fine, don't bother to even ask. Though now Tukaram is wondering why there are so many sexually frustrated people in our universe. Don't bother to even ask. I said to love, I want to pull your pants down. And she said, fine, don't bother to even ask. Though now Tukaram is wondering why there are so many sexually frustrated people in our universe.
This is one of those that they don't sing to the kids in, where they speak Marathi.
What I think is very lovely about this, although it may at first seem kind of shocking, is that Tukaram is saying that our sexuality deserves to be within our divinity as much as everything else.
It's something that is said over and over again by these poets.
Right. And
Starting
we in
with
our
Rabia.
society have been we just sort of cut off these parts of ourselves that are so natural, so much a part of ourselves. And he's including it all, which is why he says, I think, why there are so many sexually frustrated people, because people, the way I read it, people are not allowing themselves to experience their whole being the way that God intended us to.
And here in the West, we tend to think this is a hangover from Victorian times. But no. It goes much deeper. And the poem in this book that addresses it so directly is Hafiez's poem, Tiny Gods. Tiny Gods. Don't limit the divine. Don't think that you're practice ahimsa, be harmless. But otherwise, and of course, we do find it from our so-called modern perspective. Shocking. Anyone else got anything else to say about this very revelatory?
I think that people are so focused on sex, and often like in our society, that they're totally unaware of how pleasant like meditation and prayer and like spiritual practices. And I feel like that's kind of what Tukaram might be hinting at here. And that like seeking like companionship with another human isn't nearly as great as like the companionship with God. But that's just what I think.
Well, thank you, Aaron. That is an interesting perspective on this poem. Yeah, well, clearly when he says to love, I want to pull your pants down, that's metaphorical. That means I want to be intimate with you. I want to be in your embrace. And I just love the way the response is, fine, don't even bother to ask. Well, that's only because Tukaram is so free with love, that love's responses let's be intimate. And the beloved, of course, and it's in Rumi, it's in Hafiz, it's in Rabia. Anything else from anyone?
Again, I'm trying to interpret it in the context of Vedantic philosophy, that sometimes we ask too many questions. The Atman is right there, and just because we have to seek, we just can't see what's right there.
Very nice. Notice that once again, this poem ends with these descending letters. In the universe is the lower state. This relationship with love is the higher state.
Brother, in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, I read one statement by Ramakrishna that when you reach God realization, you get a body of love, and it also has a various organs of love, including a sexual organ of love. So I don't know if it's related to those things.
Absolutely it is, Rajiv. And who does he tell that to?
I
He
don't
tells it,
remember.
he tells it to M
Okay.
very, very early on, trying to free M from his, at the time, Victorian repression. I mean, M is afraid to dance and sing. He won't dance and sing in the beginning. Takes him a couple of years to loosen up enough to where he'll dance and sing with the master. But the master just confronts him right away with this. It's almost within the first couple of chapters of M's relationship with him. The master tells him this. So yes, it's there. Thank you for remembering that, Rajiv. That's very apropos and very to the point here.
Where do you know specifically where in, like what part is at the beginning?
It's
So I can
right.
find that.
It's either in the first or second chapter of the gospel, where M is talking to the master, and the master is just busting up M's his way of being, that though I don't think the master ever directs it to him specifically, I don't remember, but that the master says is like being an Englishman. And but the first thing he does is bust his ego, but good, right away in the very first part of the first chapter. And it isn't very long afterwards that, as Rajiv remembered, that's there. And very good catch, Rajiv. That's very good for remembering that. Because it is definitely right there.
But I guess it's sort of after realization, I don't know, like many people, and maybe like when there is temptation to do wrong, people might justify their activities by telling their own themselves all sorts of stories, and misusing these words of great masters.
Oh, yes. But we mustn't focus on what they do, Rajiv. It's none of our business. All of the great masters tell us, don't be thinking so much about what other people do and think. Mother is very explicit about this right on her deathbed. And Christ says, why are you so concerned about the mote in your brother's eye? And you're ignoring the log that is in your eye. And Mother says, if you want peace of mind, my dears, do not find fault with others. Look to your own faults. So what other people do and say, it's unavoidable for us to know about it. We will know it. But I mean, and I don't think anybody ever said it more explicitly than Don Juan Matus in his conversations with Carlos Castaneda. He says, why are you wasting your time thinking about what other people say and think?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't concern you at all. Concern yourself with, these issues that you have with yourself. This tendency to be self-centered and tell your story and be self-important and puffed up. all those things. What about those?
Right.
So we have just time enough to read this poem, not time enough to discuss it. Jaime, would you like to read A Private Stash?
Sure, Brother Shankar. A private stash. I think God gave us the wrong medicine. Let's take a poll. How enlightened have you been feeling? I bet he keeps a private stash of something that really works. A private stash. I think God gave us the wrong medicine. Let's take a poll. How enlightened have you been feeling? I bet he keeps a private stash of something that really works. So
that's where we'll start next week.
okay. Thank you, Brother Shankar. That was cute.
Yeah, that is.
Very hilarious as usual as Tukaram is.
Well, this is why we have to. This is why, the subtext here. I'll just say this from my perspective. The subtext is, this is why we have to get intimate with God, so that, she will share her private stash with us.
No doubt. Thank you, Brother Shankar.
As Sri Ramakrishna says, hemp smokers love one another's company. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So good night, everyone. For those of you who join us
Good night.
tomorrow evening, there will be the class on Holy Mother. And just to repeat something that was said at the beginning, of those who were with us last week at the beginning of the session, there was a discussion about what we would do when we finished the book. And this book, which we're just about to finish. And the suggestion came from here that we begin again at the beginning. Not only will we learn my feeling is that each of us will hear more each time we read these poems, but there are new people who have joined us. And so anyway, I ask that people privately send me emails with their vote about how we should go forward. And the vote was decisively in favor of starting the book again at the beginning. And I did not vote, so my vote was not counted among those. But it was decisive. So when we finish, we'll start again, not with Rabia, but with the introductory matter to the book. So we get a good idea of what it is that Ladinsky says he's doing here. And I think it's very instructive what he says to us. But for the next week or two, we have some Tukaram yet to read. So good night and sweet blessings to us all.
Amen.
Blessings to
Thank
us.
you.
Good
Namaste.
night.
Namaste.
Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock.
Namaste.
Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, there's the class on Holy Mother, her life. Swami Chaitanananda's book, Sri Sharda Devi, Her Divine Play. On Wednesday nights, Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. And then on Saturdays at noon, there is How to Know God, Swami Prabhavananda's translation and interpretation commentary of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And next Sunday, there will be a talk titled Modern Masters of Advaita, which will feature Swami Vivekananda, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and a guest from the world of quantum physics, not present with us, but some of what he said. And because he became a confirmed Advaitist. So that'll be the talk this coming Sunday, the 30th. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
See you sometime soon. If not, anytime sooner, next Monday. And Heidi, thank you so very much for taking those clothes over to the church. Now we've got all of those clothes distributed.
You're very welcome.
Part of them went to the Amani Center, the Center for the Immigrants and Homeless in Clarkston, and the other half went to that Church of Christ on Coolidge, and
They were very appreciative of that.
Well,
Yeah,
they're a wonderful, wonderful group of people over there. We've been dealing with them now for several years. Holy Mother's helping hands. Good night, everyone.
Good night.